A man claims he found his missing teenage daughter in a car with a 67-year-old man, an alleged stalker. And now this father is accused of killing that man, and he could be facing criminal charges. I'm going to talk with renowned predator catcher Chris Hansen to get to the bottom of this story. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. This was a wild series of events that played out very quickly in the middle of the night in Arkansas last week. So we have 36-year-old Aaron Spencer, who reportedly called 911 to say that his 14-year-old daughter was missing. And while his wife searched the area around the home, Spencer hopped into his truck, started driving around looking for her. And that is when Spencer apparently spotted 67-year-old Michael Fosler with his teenage daughter in a car. And according to Spencer's wife, Heather, he started chasing the car that Fosler was driving. There was some sort of accident. After the crash, there was apparently some kind of confrontation between the two men, and Spencer allegedly shot Fosler, killing him. Well, when Lonoke County Sheriff's deputies arrived, they took Spencer into custody on suspicion of murder. His family was able to get enough money together for a $150,000 bail. There's a lot of different moving parts in this, including Fosler's history. So I want to bring in right now renowned predator catcher, founder of TruBlu, the host of Takedown on TruBlu, the host of Predators I've Caught with Chris Hansen. Who am I going to bring in? I think you guessed it, Chris Hansen, to talk more about this. Chris, good to see you.
What a wild case, Jesse.
I was going to ask you, in your experience, have you seen this kind of vigilante justice?
Apparently the guy was already warned in some method or fashion. And so they get onto this, the father does, and he finds the girl in this guy's car. Imagine the outrage. Now, you know, that doesn't mean it's okay to kill somebody because of this, but you have to take this into consideration. So I would have to believe that while there are charges here, and while it may be a question of fact for a judge or jury, jury's going to be pretty sympathetic to a fellow who's in this position.
I also am going to make the argument, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, if you can even get a fair and impartial jury in a case like this. But your experience in your career, you've seen parents who have taken.
Oh, I've seen. Yeah, it's happened.
Violent with people like this.
It's happened. It's rare.
Yeah.
Most people let the criminal justice system do its job. But I just finished a sting operation in Florida with the Polk County Sheriff's deputies down there and detectives, Grady Judd, the sheriff down there. And in a matter of days, we caught a lifeguard from a Disney resort. I mean, here's a guy who's looking at children all day, and he shows up at our sting house to meet up and have a sexual liaison with a 14-year-old girl because he says his fiance wasn't paying enough attention to him. We had another guy who was in the Orlando area on business as a videographer, there for a convention, from Minnesota. He lies about his name. He jerks the detectives around. He lies to me during my interview with him. And it turns out all the time, all the while we're talking to him, he is out on bail after being arrested for virtually the same crime in Minnesota. So he's out on bail for trying to have sex with a boy in Minnesota. And what does he do? He goes off on business to Florida, and he gets right online and tries to set up another sexual liaison with another 14-year-old boy in Florida.
It's pretty disgusting, and I would say, oh my gosh, shocking, but really not shocking since we cover this so much. Going back to this situation, though, so Spencer's arrest, as you can imagine, it has caused a lot of outrage in the local community and online. So Heather set up a Give, Send, Go fundraising page, which has raised, our understanding, more than $100,000 to go toward Aaron Spencer's legal defense. I believe this was after an issue with GoFundMe because you're not allowed to raise money for a legal defense on that platform. So she's accepting donations through Venmo and Cash App. But a lot of people are outraged at what happened here. And a couple days after the shooting, the sheriff took to Facebook to kind of try to quell the growing unrest.
As your sheriff, it is our duty to conduct a thorough and factual investigation. Law enforcement does not file charges. We gather evidence and submit a case to the prosecutor, who will then decide whether or not to file charges. Currently, official charges have not been filed. I have not, nor will I, advocate for any specific charge.
Now, as of Monday night, it doesn't appear that the district attorney's office has filed official charges. This was more a preliminary murder charge, so there's not an official charge yet. But we are learning more about Mr. Spencer and Mr. Fosler's backgrounds. So we started by looking up the suspected shooter, Aaron Spencer, and we actually looked him up on Truth Finder. It's really easy to do. You just put in the person's name, location, less than a minute. Our paid subscription gave us access to all of these court records. And all we were really able to find with respect to his criminal history was a speeding citation in 2010. By the way, Law and Crime, we partner with Truth Finder. We use it to get details on the people that are involved in our stories. But even if you don't work in true crime, it can just be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind. It's one of the largest public record search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And by the way, right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. So if you're interested, go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. So what about Michael Fosler? Well, according to a post from Heather on the fundraising page, her daughter's interactions with Fosler actually started earlier this year. She wrote, in spring-summer 2024, our then 13-year-old child was targeted, groomed, and ultimately raped by the boyfriend of a family friend. Our family did not know this monster. He just appeared in a place where our child should have been safe and got access to her phone number, and that's all it took. We let the justice system do its job. The monster who hurt our child was charged quickly, but released even faster on a $50K bond. He was awaiting court in December for several felonies in relation to what he did to our child. Now, those charges appeared to include internet stalking of a child and sexual assault, but the exact details weren't available because the criminal complaint has been sealed for privacy. But Chris, that kind of gives us an idea of what we're dealing with here.
Well, yeah, obviously this guy was caught. The damage was done to this child, the grooming and the exploitation, and he doesn't learn his lesson. Just like the guys I described in our most recent sting, this guy will not stop until he is put in prison. And so that's all going to come into play when the prosecutor considers the charges against the father of the victim here. And I can't imagine that he'll see a day in prison.
The idea, though, that he goes after the person that he's accused of first targeting, not even going out and trying to attack somebody, but going after the initial person. That's the part, and that's why people are outraged that he was out on bail too.
He's a stone cold predator. I mean, what else can you say about a guy like this? Somebody like that is incorrigible. Somebody like that doesn't learn a lesson. Somebody like that can't be deterred. If you get arrested and you're out on bail pending criminal charges of this type and you go back, these people in some cases are like heroin addicts.
Yeah.
They need to fulfill this fantasy. The heroin addict knows there's a 20% chance there's fentanyl in the heroin, they do it anyway. The predator knows there's a 20% chance they're going to get caught by me, by one of the law enforcement agencies around the country, but they do it anyway. They can't control it. And for that subset of people who commit this crime, there's no choice but to keep them locked up because they will offend again and again.
Now, to be clear, from a legal point of view, right, these are allegations that are being asserted. These are allegations being asserted by the Spencer family. But just to go back to this, according to Heather Spencer, she and her husband, they wake up at around 1 a.m. on October 8th to the sound of their daughter's dog barking, which they say was unusual. And when she wasn't in her bed, they started a frantic search. The two reportedly didn't know that Fosler had apparently been in contact with their teenage daughter. But Heather said that on social media, they believed Fosler had taken the girl to kill her. So when this car wreck happened, Spencer says he was able to grab his daughter from the car. Fosler attacked him, so he shot him. So kind of a self-defense argument. Now, the sheriff has said that they investigate every death involving a shooting like this as a homicide, and whether or not they believe that homicide was justifiable or not, that would have to be determined as the investigation progressed. But Chris, here's the thing. You put the legal aspects to the side. Whether this was self-defense or perhaps even downgraded to something like voluntary manslaughter. You're acting in the heat of the moment. You're acting under extreme emotional disturbance. Guy sees his daughter allegedly being kidnapped, and he's coming to the rescue. You can understand that. You put aside the legal aspect. I don't understand from a point of view, from a public policy point of view, how they charge him. I get it.
Yeah,
you don't want everybody taking justice into their own hands, but...
Yeah, especially given the fact that there is this belief that maybe he was going to kill the girl. And maybe in his twisted mind, without that witness, he doesn't face prison on the charges. We don't know. And we also don't know what was going through the father's head, but I can predict without fear of contradiction that the father was afraid. And if you're looking at your daughter in the hands of a predator, again, I don't see how this guy gets charged.
Let's say he does.
Yeah.
Let's say this is a murder charge. finding a fair and impartial jury, given the community outrage here.
I don't see a prosecutor in a smaller town like this who knows everybody, who knows, all the players in this. I just can't imagine that this man will ultimately go to trial for any sort of homicide.
Now, to be clear, look, I've covered cases before, different kinds of
It's
abuse.
possible, and we've all seen,
Yeah,
exceptions to that common sense. Thinking.
Because murder's not the answer. I mean, look at Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Clear case, she was abused. Menendez brothers, you can make the argument that they were abused. They're going back and forth about whether it was a self-defense argument. But the point is we're not just saying murder is a justification. But here's what's interesting. The sheriff told USA Today last week, this guy that preyed upon their daughter was released on bond, and we had stopped him that night and got him with her. That bond would have been revoked. He would have never got out of jail. None of the bond companies would have let him out. We wouldn't let him out. A lot of things there. So he's seemingly acknowledging Fosler was a predator and a danger. Let's start there.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe what he's arguing is that the father should have called the sheriff's department, called 911, and let them handle it as opposed to take matters into his own hands. That's a good argument. And then he would have been arrested and never let out on bond again until and after he faced criminal charges in court. That's a reason why maybe you detain somebody and you investigate the case and maybe there is some sort of charge filed and it becomes a question of fact for a judge or jury. But in the heat of the moment, does any parent wait until the police get there? Do you call 911 and then give chase? Do you just do it because you act out of instinct? Those are hard questions to answer, and it's hard to really point a guilty finger at this dad for doing what he did based upon what we know so far.
And it's different than, and the allegations don't support, the facts don't support this, if he had went to the car, immediately opened fire, if there was a struggle and he was trying to get his daughter back.
It would be different if this was a case where we have seen in the past where the guy somehow sneaks a gun into the courtroom and sees him and says, you so-and-so, bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
Or if he gets him being walked into the courthouse, or he goes to his home and kicks the door in and takes vengeance that way. But this is a case where the man who was facing criminal prosecution for grooming and sexually exploiting his teenage daughter has custody of that child. I mean, I don't know. I might come unglued myself or something like that.
And just to add to this, so Heather, on this post on the fundraising page, wrote, "My husband is a combat veteran who has always protected his country and family. I have no doubt our child would have not come home if my husband hadn't found her." So it's a tragic case, but a complicated case and a really sad case. Again, I don't understand how you would be able to get a jury that would be fair and impartial that wouldn't look at this and say, I can't find this guy.
Yeah, which is exactly why you have to wonder if it's even going to get prosecuted.
Yeah.
I mean, and you also have to ask the question, what are the additional charges that this guy is going to face, the predator? I mean, this obviously adds on to his. He's dead.
He's dead.
So
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter now. But I mean, clearly, had he not been killed, he would have been facing a lot more time in prison.
They said they wouldn't have let him out. So look, it's a really tragic circumstance. I will say this: I can understand if they decide to charge him with either manslaughter or murder. I mean, a life was taken. I get it, but at the same time, trying to secure a conviction there, I think is going to be really, really tough.
I don't think it happens.
Chris, so good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Jesse.
Let everybody know where they can watch you, see you, catch predators like we talk about.
We have our own streaming crime network, TruBlu, TRUBLU. Watch TruBlu.com for details. Takedown with Chris Hansen. We have 100 new episodes and many more on the way. Several documentaries in the works, crime-related. Podcast is Predators I've Caught with Chris Hansen, and it's all right there.
If you want to see more of this man, now you know where to go. Chris Hansen, good seeing you.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much. All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.